Continuing on with our discussion about the reformer. Now, we didn't go into detail on the springs in the last video because I wanted to specialize a video in terms of your springs. This is something that can definitely be confusing as you're getting used to the reformer. So I'm going to talk you through the springs, their purpose, and then I'll give you some instructions on, say, what exercise might require what springs. Again, keeping in mind this is a specific bed for this studio, but similar springs are out there. They are color-coded. Color-coded for convenience. So, of course, when you're discussing with a customer or a group setting, for example, you can mention, guys, can you please place on a yellow spring? Can you add on a yellow and a blue spring? Very common throughout a class, you are going to have spring changes. So the convenience of having those springs color-coded is really, really great. Now, our reformer, it has different springs, different colors. A yellow spring. This is our lightest spring here, our yellow spring. We then have our blue spring. That is our medium spring, blue spring. We also have our heavy red spring. Trying to pull it to you guys in its heavy spring, red spring. There are two of each. 2 yellow, 2 blue, and 2 red springs. So say I was going to go into a foundation exercise. This is where I would start with my footwork. I would be placing on a blue spring, a red spring, and the way that I like it is another blue spring. The option to have it a little bit heavier could be a blue and 2 red. I do 2 blue and a red spring. That is a nice solid foundation there to start some footwork. It's adding resistance, it's adding strength. Thick lower body, especially lower body lying down on a carriage, it definitely means you've got more strength to be able to push, which means you're going to need heavier spring options. If I don't have those heavy spring options, I'm going to definitely find it hard to bring my carriage in and find resistance. So now I know I've got my toes on my bar, my heels are lifted, I've got a really nice amount of resistance to open and close the carriage. I need to control my reformer as I bring it in and as I press away there. If I was on a single blue spring, for example, I'm not going to feel that really beautiful sensation of strength building that I would if I was on that heavier foundation. So again, I'm on that reformer, I'm not even coming in. I'm losing myself there. I'm practically not able to bring myself in. I have to wait for the reformer to slowly bring itself in with that light blue spring setting. But a blue spring is fantastic for upper body exercises. Upper body, especially for petite or more feminine builds, they do find that that is a really nice spring to work with, and especially if you're layering exercises on. Always the option to add on a yellow spring for upper body because it's such a nice way to build if you do have regular customers coming in. So I've got a blue spring on now and I'm going to put myself into a little upper body flow. I'm going to have my knees apart, my hands come into my short loops. That's right, my hands are in my short loops. One blue spring is on still and I'm just successfully flowing through, reaching into that position. Nice and controlled still. But I'm not struggling. I'm not really forcing my hands out. I definitely know if I was to put a red spring on in this situation, I would be requiring quite a lot of strength and a lot of grit to move my reformer. That's my build, that's my strength. So of course you're going to play around with springs depending on strength. But again, most of the time we are able to work on springs consistently, and that's what you should be building your class around. Something that flows, that makes sense. So that is a really good another purpose of having your springs and why you're setting a certain spring is because it's the flow of the class. For example, I had on those 2 blue and the red. I've then taken off 1 blue and a red. I'm now coming upright into my position where I've got just 1 blue one. That's a spring change. I flow through an exercise. For example, that is my hands and my straps on my light blue spring. Really good, really great flow. I can then also come off my reformer, still maintaining that single blue spring and perhaps come on into a lunge series. Again, if it was that blue and that yellow for a customer, also fantastic. Now again, we're just working through nice little scooter series here. More challenging on a burn than challenging on that strength. If you're wanting the strength, you're going to go on to a heavier spring, a red spring. Hands will need to come to the foot bar for this one, most definitely. Bringing yourself in, using your hands on your foot bar to make sure that you've got that support. The springs become heavier. You should not be just challenging an exercise and struggling through without finding the proper piece of equipment to support the body. So we've gone up to a red spring. As you can see, there are certain exercises you can do with certain springs. It's important to play around. Yellow is your light spring, blue is your medium, and your red is your heavy. They combine. You layer with the springs as well, you combine them and you make a really wonderful flow based on different strengths and bodies. But again, never intimidate anyone with a spring and never think that your spring is the right spring for everyone. Some customers will need options for their spring. Please be open to making those modifications for customers, ensuring that they can flow successfully. I will always say, I see struggle. I do see the struggle because some people don't voice up and say they're in pain or it doesn't feel right for them. So encourage them to say so and say you find more success in movement than you do in struggle. So that is my big takeaway when it comes to springs. I don't want you to be an instructor that is so adamant on your springs are the right springs. Make modifications, make everyone feel included, and that it's okay to have the options for the springs to change. Play around with them, have fun with them. Hopefully your reformer is something that makes sense to you, but that is the springs for our reformer here, and that is the springs on the